Happiness through curiosity on the Ranveer Show. I don't know exactly how a presidential style system works in terms of policy.
Okay.
It's one guy and his team in power, and then the narrative about the deep state and all, sure. But if Trump gets elected, or our boy, Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy gets elected, how much will that change American policy? Therefore, how much will that affect geopolitics? And then I'd also finally like to head into our India chapter and Dr. Jaishankar and the Modi government's policies. But me, from a policy perspective, also a bit of a narrative about America mainly, perhaps China, and then India.
Right. So when it comes to the US, they have this global domination. Their so-called rules-based world order, which is like the so-called international law, it's what dominates, trade and behavior of nations and all that worldwide. They also have this extensive naval network and military bases all over the world. So that's how they dominate the system. The Chinese are trying to create their own system, maybe a parallel system, which is the bifurcation of the world order. The Chinese and the Russians together with Iran and the certain other nations against the American system. And we are seeing the emergence of multipolarity, which is the global south, which is kind of led by India. We have ensured that the African Union becomes part of the G20, which is now the G21, all that. So what's the deal with America and Taiwan and China? So the Americans, like I said, are making sure that they are moving TSMC to the US, to US soil and to German soil, which means they seem to be preparing for the possibility that the Chinese may invade Taiwan, in which case the Chinese should get nothing. And they will still have TSMC, which means that the semiconductor manufacturing, all that will continue on US and German soil. So they seem to be beginning to go towards the, let's say, mindset that an invasion of Taiwan may be inevitable, or maybe a non-military takeover of Taiwan by China may be inevitable. Maybe not today, maybe not in the next 3 years, maybe in the next 10 years. But that seems to be the direction in which the American thought process seems to be going. Now, like you said, that the geopolitical future of the world can kind of be gauged by the various policies that governments have and various powers have. Because you can take a certain set of policies and kind of extrapolate where it goes in the future. And that kind of tells you what their envisaged future world order is like. Right? So if you look at all that, you can see that the American footprint seems to be slowly shrinking away. Okay, they are not building so many more warships. If you look at their arms production, their production of ammunition, missiles, machine gun rounds and whatnot, it's kind of not where it should be for a global geopolitical power. The Russians produce way more arms and ammunition than the Americans. Maybe the quality may not be as good as the American quality, like they say, like the West likes to say. But quantity has a quality of its own, like Joseph Stalin said. And yeah, so that's the deal. So the American footprint over the world seems to be slowly shrinking. Obviously, one cannot take them lightly. They are the major power, second largest nuclear arsenal after Russia. But overall, they have the biggest footprint all over the world in terms of military bases and ports and military presence, naval presence, all of that. America is still the largest power. It's kind of Rome in decline, kind of in the beginning phase of decline. And there is the cultural factor in the US. American exceptionalism is gone. They have opened the southern border. They last year, I don't know what the statistics are. If I may be wrong, don't quote me. But possibly over more than 3 million illegal immigrants were allowed into the US by the government. And they were relocated to various parts of the US. So that, imagine, it's obviously illegal. It's illegal. You have to come through the proper process and through the proper channels. And if the government is allowing illegality, what does it mean? Corruption.
From the outside looking in, from a long-term perspective, and please, I would actually like for you to disagree with me when it comes to this, but I think you're going to agree with me. From the outside looking in, it seems like the way to fix America's future is to actually have a completely fresh perspective, ideally young perspective on leadership, which is not Biden or Trump. Trump is too chaotic. Again, we're generalizing a very large argument into one sentence. So I'm sure there are nuances which I don't want to get into. Biden's too old. As Indians, we get shown a lot of Vivek Ramaswamy, who seems like a very articulate, intense, perhaps controversial, strong-willed, but articulate guy who's also got a great education behind him. And somewhere as Indians, you can see certain layers of his Indianness. Maybe that's why we feel an affinity for him. And there's that other young girl, Latin American, I can't remember her name.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
AOC. These are the two names that pop out in terms of young leaders. What do you think of this whole next phase of American politics?
Right. US politics is very interesting. Really interesting. First, let's take a 10,000 mile look at the US politics. The political system. It's a two-party system. You have the Democrats, you have the Republicans. A two-party system in a democracy is one step above a one-party state like China or North Korea. So it's not really democracy because these two parties, the Republicans and Democrats, they have the exact same foreign policy. Exact same foreign policy. Warmongers starting new wars. The Republicans will use bombers, strategic bombers that are completely black. The Democrats will use the same bombers painted in rainbow colors, but they're going to drop the same bombs on you. So they have the exact same foreign policy. Now, we have Mr. Biden, who's currently the president. He clearly is not capable of running a country, to put it mildly. His vice president is Miss Kamala Harris. She doesn't have the mental mileage and bandwidth to run a country. So the question is, who is running the country? The country is running itself, is it? Somebody is running the country. Who is it? That's what they perhaps possibly call the deep state. The defense establishment, the foreign policy establishment, all that. The Pentagon and whoever is in there, this amorphous, fuzzy, obscure mass of individuals and maybe whatever it is, right? So the nation doesn't really need a president to run itself. This is, by now, it should be clear. Now we have this new election coming up, end of this year, end of 24, somewhere around that time. Who are the big candidates? I think everybody would agree that Mr. Biden is doubtful. He's way too old to run for president again. Miss Kamala Harris would be not a great candidate. I think most people would agree because nobody would vote for her. So I expect that the Democrats will somehow or the other put up a new candidate, whoever that is. I doubt it's Miss Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is a lighter version of Miss Kamala Harris, in my opinion. I don't think it'll be her. So who will it be? I'm not really sure, but that's one side of the story. That's the Democrats. The other side, we have the Republicans. So the big heavyweight is Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump is the big guy. He's above 50% in the polls. So when it comes to the Republican voters, over 50% are supporting Mr. Trump. Then we have Nikki Haley, who has a reasonable amount of, she's number 3 or something. I'm not sure, whatever it is right now. We have Mr. Ron DeSantis. And like we discussed, we have Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy is the sharpest of the lot, the most articulate of the lot, the youngest of the lot. He has taken everybody down, including his own party people. Nikki Haley has openly called her corrupt, and he has shown how she is corrupt, and nobody can deny that. The only person he has steadfastly refused to criticize is Mr. Trump. So if you look at Mr. Ramaswamy, he's either angling for a vice presidential run along with Mr. Trump as the presidential candidate, or he is angling for a 2028 presidential run. He's putting in the groundwork right now because he's very young, he's rich, he's very articulate. He can destroy any opposition, he can destroy any reporter, any news media person, or any of the other candidates in running with him, against him. So that's the deal with him. Now, when it comes to Mr. Ramaswamy, Vivek Ramaswamy, Indians love him, obviously, because he's Indian, right? He's Indian, he's Desi. And he's not a Christian convert, he's a Hindu. And he says he's proud to be Hindu. The question is America ready for a Hindu president or vice president? I think America is not ready for that. I don't think so. And even if, let's say, he succeeds and becomes the vice president, or let's say even the president, will it change anything? It will change nothing. America's foreign policy doesn't ever change. It remains the same. When Mr. Trump was in power, he tried to change certain things. Did it work out? He wanted a wall between the US and Mexico. Where's the wall? He tried his best, but he was an outsider and they made him fail. They ensured none of his big initiatives even gets off the ground. He's an outsider. Now, he may again become the presidential candidate for the Republicans, but let's see how far that goes. Similarly, Mr. Ramaswamy is not a politician. He's not a career politician. Okay? So he's also kind of an outsider. And he's an interesting outsider. So let's see what role he plays. He's kind of a cannonball running through the whole thing and taking down people. And let's see how far it goes. So that's how I see it. I don't see the US as a nation and as a society being ready for a Hindu president or vice president yet. If you are brown, you may work. It may work for you. Miss Kamala Harris is half Indian, half whatever she is, mixed race. But she's not Hindu, and she became she portrays herself as a black person, more or less, right? We had Tulsi Gabbard, who was there in the 2020 elections. She couldn't get far at all. They kind of kicked her off she was not even allowed to debate in the Republican primaries, if I am not mistaken. And Mr. Ramaswamy, he's doing well. He is, he's very impactful, but he's right now polling at around 1 or 2%. So that's not great polling figures, So yeah, it's challenging for him. I think he's looking at a long run kind of thing, long term kind of perspective. That's where I see it.
Okay, fair. And none of this matters from a geopolitical perspective.
No.
Geopolitics is going to keep going on. It's just going to carry forward from the momentum of everything that we've spoken about. If you enjoyed this clip from the Ranveer Show, we've uploaded a ton of other clips related to a ton of other topics. So explore the channel because there's something for everyone.